Well, good evening, District 1. This is the first of our 7 district-by-district meetings. I'm going to do an overview that is information probably for everybody in the city. And then when we take questions, I'm going to ask that people be respectful and allow the residents of District 1 to get their questions answered. This is their one time to ask questions specific to their neighborhood. We have the district managers and all the department heads here to talk about that. But let me start by talking a little bit about things that affect everybody. And of course, you know where I'm going to start, and that is COVID. You've seen the reports. The state of Michigan now leads the United States in the highest COVID infection rate in the country. And while Detroit is a little better than the surrounding areas, the number of people hospitalized, this isn't just infections now, this is serious. The number of people hospitalized has more than doubled in 2 weeks. We got 200 people in our hospitals. And if that doubles again in another 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to be into the kinds of problems we haven't seen since last April. Now, the Detroit Health Department's done a remarkable job today. They gave their 200,000th vaccine administered directly by the health department. And we only started in January. It is a remarkable accomplishment, but it hasn't been all at TCF. Denise Fair and her team have gone out to every senior citizen apartment building in the city, and they went out to every homeless shelter, and they went out to a number of churches on Saturdays, and they went out to a huge number of community centers. Each one of these dots is an area where the health department took vaccines into the community. In the next couple of weeks, that's going to be expanded dramatically because we have to reach everybody. The TCF Center has been enormously efficient, but we can't do it all in one location, and you're going to see more and more of this. But unfortunately, we can't celebrate because we haven't been able to stop what is a remarkable surge in COVID among our young people, something we have never experienced in the year of this pandemic. And this chart here is a little confusing, but when I show it to you, you'll understand what I'm talking about. The orange line is the percentage of people who have a vaccine, and it's by age group. So down here, the 18 to 29-year-olds, the 30 to 39-year-olds, you can see very little. Of course, not their fault. They weren't eligible for the vaccines till the last week. But you start to get up to the 70 and 80-year-olds, and this is a chart from southeastern Michigan, almost half of the elderly have been vaccinated. We, of course, want to move this whole line up there. The blue line is the increase in hospitalizations. And look at who's being hospitalized. It's not the 70 and 80-year-olds. It's the 35-year-olds, the 45-year-olds, the 50-year-olds. This British variant is hitting our younger population harder than anything we have seen before. And so we have got to expand the vaccines more quickly to the rest of the population. And so here's what we're going to do. I talked about this earlier today, but the TCF Center is going to nearly double the daily vaccine capacity from 5,000 to 8,000 a day starting on Monday. Now, as we've talked about before, if we use all of the parking spaces in the drive-through center, it only allows us to do 5,000 per day. And so what we had to do was go take the other side of the convention center and create a walk-up site so we could do 8,000 a day. So we're going to fill the parking structure, and we're going to use a big conference room, and here's how it's going to work. When you call, you're going to have 2 choices. You can do the drive-through, or you can do the walk-up. If you get a drive-through appointment, your second shot will be drive-through. If you get a walk-up appointment, your second shot will be walk-up. You call the same number, 313-230-0505. You can tell them which option that you want. And given how popular the drive-through option is, my guess is that the walk-up appointments might be able to be available sooner, but if you want to wait a few days more for the drive-through, you'll be able to do that. So how is it going to work? Well, the drive-through, as everybody in the city now knows, is going to be exactly the same. It's running beautifully. Hakeem Berry and the team are doing a phenomenal job. It's not going to change, but we max out at 5,000 a day. On the other side of the building, here's what we're going to do. This is the rooftop of the convention center, what anybody growing up in the city would have called the Cobo roof. You go on Congress and you go up that circular drive up to the top onto the roof. And so you'll go up on the roof. The parking is free. You don't have to pay for it, unlike your normal trips down to the convention center. And you see that red circle there, that's the elevators. And so all you'll do is you'll park on the roof, you go to the elevator, you'll go down a floor and go to the conference center. You will get your shot. Our medical staff will watch you for 15 minutes. You get on the elevator and you go back to your parking space. I didn't want to do this in January and February because it was very cold. We wanted to keep everybody indoors in the parking structure, but I think now we can do this. And so starting Monday, it's going to be 8,000 slots a day. We are going to accommodate the increase in vaccinations that we need to beat this virus. One other thing that I want to talk to you about in details, and then we're going to take questions on what's on your minds. But last week, Dan Gilbert made an extraordinary announcement, he and his wife Jennifer, and the Gilbert Foundation. And I've had probably 100 questions saying, how does this work? Whose taxes is he paying off? And so I want to show you tonight how the Gilbert tax payment plan works and how, if you're eligible, you can take advantage of it and get your taxes paid off. Basically, what Dan Gilbert has said is he'll pay off the property taxes for the 20,000 poorest Detroiters who own their own homes. That's basically what he's saying. And I'll show you why he did it and how it fits into our overall plan. Because here is the thing that we are trying to accomplish. I'm going to stay with this until blight is gone from the city, and we're not that far away. We had 40,000 houses to knock down in 2014, and today we got 14,000. Within 5 years, I think it is absolutely possible that there are no more abandoned houses in this city, that we're going to renovate 8,000 houses that can be saved. We're going to take down these vacant factories. I think this city can be completely free of any abandoned buildings. But we can't do that if people keep leaving their homes. We can't have any new abandoned houses. We have got to keep our renters renting in the houses they're in. We need to keep our homeowners from losing their houses. And this is, Dan Gilbert has been a part of this strategy. So here's what we've done. It's been a 6-year battle. In 2015, 9,000 occupied houses were foreclosed in Detroit. And this was something that we went and hit with every legal resource we had. I went up to Lansing and got a bill passed that allowed the treasurer to not foreclose, but set up payment plans where you only had to put 10% down. And that dramatically cut the foreclosures almost immediately. And the treasurer, Eric Sabri, once he had that law, went out and made just huge numbers of payment arrangements, dramatically cut the foreclosures. But the other big tool we have is this. Detroit has a property tax exemption ordinance. It's called HPTAP. And here's what it says. It says that you may be entitled to a full or partial exemption of property taxes. You may not have to pay your taxes if you're an individual who makes less than $22,000 or a family of 4 making less than $32,000. These aren't exact numbers, but they're pretty close. And here was the thinking when the city adopted this ordinance. We have a lot of folks in this city who had a good living, bought their house, they own it, it's paid off. They're retired now, they're living on Social Security. The city doesn't want you to lose the house you've had for your life for foreclosure because your Social Security doesn't give you enough to pay your taxes. So the city entitles you to get an exemption. You've earned that house. You shouldn't have to keep paying taxes if you're making less than $22,000. Or, as happens many times in this city, the house was passed down from your parents or your grandparents. We have multi-generational houses all through the city. The house is paid off. The risk to the children or the grandchildren is, I'm going to lose the family house for the property taxes. I don't make enough money. You can get an exemption. And if you don't make above these amounts of money, you don't have to risk losing your house this year, next year, 3 years from now. And so what we needed to do, because this exemption wasn't nearly well enough publicized, was get out and show people. And so if you go to the city website, detroitmi.gov, and you click on the property taxes link, it will take you through the process of how to get this exemption. But of course, a lot of the people who need the help the most are not surfing the internet. And so again, this is where Quicken came in, and Dan Gilbert, who helped fund 42 different agencies, who went out and knocked on doors across the city and showed folks how the poverty exemption worked, and they got 11,000 people enrolled. It was a great accomplishment, and here's the result. We cut foreclosures of occupied houses by 95% in 4 years. We were down to 500. Last year, the treasurer canceled the foreclosures entirely because of COVID, but we were down to 500. It's a remarkable accomplishment, and we've stepped forward and said it's not enough. And so Dan Gilbert and Jennifer Gilbert came forward, and here's what they said. I'm really glad we got folks enrolled in the poverty exemptions, and I'm glad we got people in payment plans. He says, but some of those folks could have enrolled in a poverty exemption 3, 4, 5 years ago. They still have these back bills from the treasurer's payment plan hanging over them. And here's what he's saying. If you enroll in the poverty exemption now so that you don't have taxes going forward, he'll pay off your back bill. What he doesn't want to do is pay $3,000 of the old bills, and then next year you owe $1,000 you can't pay anyway. And so they're trying to solve this problem once and for all, get you enrolled in the exemption in the future, and as soon as you do, they pay off your taxes. I've never heard of anybody in any city in this country where the richest guy in town said, I'm going to pay the property taxes of the 20,000 poorest homeowners in town. But that's what he's saying, and he's saying, I'm not just giving you the money, I'm making sure going forward, your house is not in jeopardy because of future taxes. So if you want to take advantage of this, if you're one of the 20,000 families is eligible, they've set up what they call the Detroit Tax Relief Fund. Here's the phone number, 313-244-0274. You can call them Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. Call them tomorrow morning, they're ready for you. If you already got your HP TAP exemption, you're all set. You call them up and they'll arrange to pay your back taxes. There's some eligibility things to go through, but by and large, if you've already got the exemption and you owe money from back years, they'll be there to help you. But what if you haven't figured out the exemption? If you call them, they will take you through the process to get the exemption. And as soon as the exemption is approved going forward, then they'll pay your back taxes as well. So you don't have to worry about the stress of what you owed in the past, and you don't have to worry about the tax bill coming next year. These are our residents who bought their houses, owned their houses, and they should not be pushed out of them because they can't afford the property taxes. And so between the treasurer, between all of the efforts of the city, and now, and so many of our community groups, and now with Dan Gilbert, we can make sure that our most vulnerable residents are secure in their homes. So please call the number and they're ready to take care of this. Now, what if you're a renter? We need you to stay in your house too. And right now, the 36th District Court is reopening. The eviction proceedings are starting again. But we have lined up $50 million with the help of the federal government and Governor Whitmer to help you. And so if you've got an eviction notice, or even if you just have a notice you're behind on your rent, we have the Detroit Eviction Helpline. And you can see the number there, but you can also find it on the city's website. It's 866-313-2520. This is for renters. You can see what we're trying to do. We're trying to create housing security. I don't want you to have any conversation with your kids that you might have to move to a new school. I'm going to lose the house. Have them have that experience of being put out on the street. We will help you. And so here's who's eligible. If for a family of 4, your income is under $44,000, a smaller number if it's a smaller family, and you have financial hardship from COVID. These are federal and state COVID funds. So if you lost your job, if your hours were cut back, if you had medical bills, whatever issue, If you fall below these income levels and you've had financial hardship from COVID, the city is going to be there to help you stay in that house until we get through this. And so we're going to offer two things. One, we'll get you a lawyer in court to represent you, because it can be tough going to the 36th District Court against these landlords. And second, we've got help with back rent. And when we make the arrangements with back rent, if your landlord has got a house in disrepair, we are going to require that landlord to put part of the back rent money to repair the house. We don't just want you going back into a substandard facility, and I believe the judges in 36th District Court have made it clear with their orders that they are going to enforce the City of Detroit's rental registration ordinance that requires you to be up to code. So we can be in a situation here where we help you get out of the eviction, help you on the back rent, get the landlord to make repairs. You're going to have to pay what you can afford to pay. And if you got a stimulus check, you're going to have to contribute. That's only fair, but we're going to be there with the help to make sure that you don't lose your home. And so I just want to thank all of our team, Wayne Metro, UCHC, Michigan Legal Services, Lakeshore Legal Aid. We have a whole battery of lawyers and social services folks. And so because you are in the city of Detroit, if you are in danger of losing your house for either foreclosure or because of eviction, the city stands behind you. We've got the resources to support you. And I hope you will turn to the website or turn to these resources because we will be there. So that gives you an overview of what the Gilbert announcement was last week. And with that, what I'd like to do, we have the district managers here from District 1, as well as pretty much all the city department heads, Chief Craig, in case anybody has any questions about the police department, who will be here to answer your questions. And so now is your chance to ask your questions. I ask you, please be respectful of the people in District 1. This is their night. Let them go first. And you'll be able to talk up to 60 seconds. We have to get through this. The last time we finished up and we had a whole lot of people still waiting. So we're going to try to be disciplined with the time. So I'd ask you to ask your question succinctly. We'll get through as many as we can until 8:30. And with that, we'll take our questions. And please, when you introduce yourself, tell us your name and tell us what neighborhood you live in. And Kim, why don't you get us started here?
Our first caller, Frank Hammer.
Okay,
Frank Hammer, you may unmute yourself.
Not Kim, as you might have gathered. All right.
You have 1 minute to ask your question.
How you doing tonight, Frank? Okay, I know you don't live in District 1. Maybe that's why he's not asking the question.
All right, we're moving on to the next caller.
Okay, Frank, we'll come back to you. But thank you for letting the District 1 guys go first. Go ahead, who's up?
Ruben Black, you may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Ruben Black, tell us where you live.
Well, actually, I live in several districts. I have residences in District 1, District 3, and it is District 4 as well.
Okay.
Okay, well, I have a couple questions. One is to you. You at the last community meeting, you said if you were informed of corruption within DPD, OCI, BOPC, that you would look into it. I've been trying to get to you. Left messages with Stephanie Poe. She has about 60 messages, returned phone calls from me. Today I called the lady that answered the phone. The normal lady that answered the phone wasn't there. There was another lady there. And she hung up the phone and said I had been rude to her previously, so she wouldn't take my call. She hung up on me. And I have that question for you. And then if Chief Craig is in attendance as well, I have a question for him because I've been calling his office and trying to get in touch with him for some time now.
15
I've been
seconds.
redirected to several different areas and different departments. It's a matter regarding his assistant chief, Todd Bettison, and statements he made during the BOPC meeting, 225-21. He made false statements. I have proof. Inside the OCI files and also the complaint, there is information that indicates he was being untruthful. And
All right, well, okay. We're not going to do this here. I've never known Todd Bettison to make a false statement, but these are questions that certainly can be raised at the Board of Police Commissioners. Next question.
Next caller, we have Larry Verse.
Okay, let us know where you live.
Yourself, you have 1 minute to ask your question.
Okay, I'm Larry Donald Verse, and I actually live in District 7. I can wait if you want, but I
Okay,
have
that's
to.
all right. Go ahead. We'll get to you.
All right, the first one has to do with what you've been speaking of, and my question is, what help do you have for people who are actually buying on a land contract and are behind? The second part has to do with public transportation, Detroit Department of Transportation. They need additional funding, and it couples with this because how do I keep up with my payments and my taxes if the bus system doesn't work because I medically cannot drive and I can't get to work on time and I can't keep a job because I can't get there on the bus?
Okay, so we just added a good deal more bus service, but let me ask Michael Oglesby to talk about what the plans are. They were cut dramatically, as you know, with COVID. We've been expanding them, and Michael, why don't you talk about what the plans are to get the service back up?
Thank you. Yes, at the beginning of the pandemic, we learned a lot. We utilized automatic passenger counters to find out what needs to be done. A lot of people think that we're running drastically less service, but that's not the case. We're actually running approximately 78.5% of our service today. One of the problems that we have is capacity. The amount of people that are allowed on the vehicle, 10. We changed that to 20. And I'm proud to say we not only changed it to 20 and we allow people to board on the front of the bus, but our overcrowding has been reduced by 22% in a short period of time. Again, it's a small window. We're watching it on a daily basis. But we're excited to see that this overcrowding is going to result in better service to get people where they need to go that have to get somewhere. A lot of the complaints that I've heard were prior to March 15th, so we're going to keep looking at this. In addition, we just recently did a new bid. There was a new pick, and we increased, I believe it was 3 of our Connect 10 services. We increased even more service. We're really looking at the ridership. We're putting the ridership, we're putting the service where the ridership should be. No longer is it peak and non-peak, early morning, afternoon. This pandemic has changed the way we have to look at public transportation, and we're looking at it and we're changing it on the fly on a regular basis. So I'm glad to hear that everybody's interested in looking at it, and we are dealing with it on a daily basis.
So I know you've got a legitimate concern. If you think about what happened, the typical work pattern of I go to work from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, and we had huge rush hour bus service. Well, a whole lot of people are not going to those office jobs, are not going to those restaurant jobs and the like. And so what DDOT has done is target the buses to where the riders are, and all of us are very anxious to get these vaccines, get all these businesses open, and get back to the schedule that you're more familiar with. Next question.
Next caller, Joanne Warwick. You may unmute yourself, and you have 1 minute to ask your question.
Good evening. All right. Maybe she also is she's a District 5, so maybe she was being polite. Go ahead.
Next caller is Detroit resident. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Please introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
Hello, Mayor Duggan. This is Brother Cunningham. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am a Detroiter, and I've been an advocate and speaking about public transportation for a long time. I'm in a new space now as a taxi driver, and they give me an earful, and a lot of times I have to turn up the radio and say, I really don't want to hear it. And I give him your number, and I have a card.
You're the one that's doing that?
What'd you say? I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm just tired. I'm tired. They all complaining to me. Oh, I seen you at city council before. I said, you know, you complain. You know, you got to complain to the people of power. You got to go to city council meetings. You got to call the mayor's office. You got to do these things. And so I just want to know if you
Seconds. 15
were
seconds.
opposed to the charter commission, the revisions they had in regards to, if you've read, I know you have, what they're proposing in regards to transportation, a merger. Would you consider, besides that, because I think maybe an authority might be good. I was just talking to Dan Dirt.
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with the transit section of that, so I don't know how to answer that. But I will say this, as far as the relationship between DDOT and SMART, I just give enormous credit to both sets of management. We now have a single fare. We started collecting fares at the same time. You can buy one fare and switch buses. We together put in the barrier doors to protect the drivers. We're synchronizing our scheduling. No longer do we have two bus systems that just run at random over each other. It's the most coordinated I have ever seen them, and I think it bodes well for us finally in 2022 getting a regional transit tax passed. People, I mean, it's been voted down a couple of times, but people just don't want to pay for two inefficient systems. And I think DDOT and SMART have made a real commitment to work together. And there's nothing that says we can't run two systems in this modern day and age of scheduling that fit well together, and I feel like they're doing that.
Would an authority or merger be okay? Would you,
Yeah, and
that aspect?
you know, you got a number of complicated questions there, including two different pension systems and the like. I used to run the smart bus system in the 90s. I really understand both sides of this. If we knew that the DDOT and smart buses were scheduled at the best times, I don't have any need to run a bus out to Sterling Heights, and I don't think the people in Macomb County need to run a bus in neighborhoods in Detroit. So I think it is possible to run an efficient transit system with the city and suburban system working together, and that's really the vision we're pursuing right now.
Next caller is Fire Tablet. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Go ahead, please introduce yourself and tell us your neighborhood.
Yes, my name is Melanie. I'm in District 2,
Okay?
and I have a question.
Which neighborhood are you in?
Bagley.
Bagley, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I have a question about, one about the retirees, and you got a lot of programs for a lot of people, but what about the retirees that took a big hit and we still lost our pension and healthcare? Anything in the plan for us?
There sure is. I made a commitment to this Retiree Protection Fund. I think, as you probably know, coming out of bankruptcy, the pension was underfunded by $300 million and was looking at a significant financial cliff in 2024 that would have jeopardized our retirees' pensions a second time. We're putting aside more than $300 million into that retiree protection fund. We set aside $85 million this year. $85 million that could have gone for police or fire, a lot of other things. We're putting $85 million aside, and I give City Council enormous credit. The city leadership have never thought a year or two down the road in the city, which is how we got into bankruptcy. But City Council has been almost unanimous in saying we're never going to let our retirees take that hit again. And so I'm confident City Council is going to put another $85 million into your protection fund this year. And I'm guessing we will do even more than that next year to make sure nobody ever comes back to you again and says you worked your career. You're not going to get what you were promised.
Next caller with the number ending with 534. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Good evening. We can.
Yes, hello. This is Miss Warwick. I don't know why when you asked me to unmute, somebody wasn't letting me unmute earlier.
All right.
And
Sounds like we
happened
figured
the
it out. So
Anyway.
go ahead.
Glad to be able to speak with you. So I live in the North End, in the lower North End, and Recently, we learned of the development that Vanguard Community Development Corporation has been planning for in the Lower North End on my block. And I want to know if you are aware that the way this CDC, Community Development Corporation, is doing business is the executive director hand-selected people from the community, about 10 people or so, had them sign non-disclosure agreements, and then she
15
calls that her internal community cabinet. And then they're running all the community engagement through them, and they came up with this plan basically in secret from the rest of us. I was purposely excluded from those meetings, and
Okay, so is Malia Howard here tonight? So let me tell you what I do know is I think there is elements of this plan that are very positive, and I think there are elements of this plan that if I were in the community, I'd have concerns about. And so I've asked Malia Howard, our district manager, to make sure that we drive a fair community engagement process. I expect before it's over, I'll be sitting in the room with you and talking this through, because this is the kind of thing that we should decide as a community. There is an opportunity to put affordable housing on Woodward where people have access to bus lines, which we need in this city. It's got to be done in a way that doesn't change the character of your neighborhood. And I think we can find that balance, and I think this is one of those times where if we sit down together as a community, we can get there. But I will talk to Malia Howard about this process. She's a very fair person. I'll make sure she's on top of it, and that it's done fairly and everybody's voice is heard.
Next, we have the caller with the number ending in 500. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Hi, this is Diane. I live in District 1 in the Grandmont community.
All right, I got a District 1 resident. Go ahead.
It's mainly comments. It's still March, and I and my neighbors have already seen four-wheelers tearing up the ballpark and racing around our neighborhood park and our neighborhood streets. Cars are parking on lawns and grass areas of vacant lots and land bank-owned lots. Speeding cars racing down our streets bulk out too early when it's extremely easy to find out when your bulk date is and more. It just continues week after week. And I believe much of the disrespect comes from a lack of enforcement and the perception of no follow-through or follow-up from neighbor complaints regarding
15
quality
seconds.
of life issues. People continue to behave badly with no consequences, and this just adds to the frustration of communities trying to thrive. The NPOs are doing the best they can.
Let me ask you a question. Have you talked to your district manager about the bulk being out on the wrong days? Okay, so we have two different questions. I've been in a lot of neighborhood meetings where people talk about they leave their Corville out too many days, they put the bulk out on the wrong day, and we go out and the first time give people a warning, and the second time we do write $50 tickets, and it's been effective. So if you let your district manager know as far as the violations on that, we take it very seriously and we will come out. Now, relative to the speeding, that is an issue that we are intensely focused on, and I'm going to ask Chief Craig if he will talk about what he's doing on the enforcement, because he's very much focused on it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor indicated, we are intensely focused. In fact, it's two areas of concern for this department. It's certainly the violence, but also the reckless driving, the speeding, the four-wheelers, the drifters, drag racing. Over the last 3 weeks, we have intensely enforced it, and I know some of the other listeners may have the same question. We talked about last week, we deployed helicopters, we deployed undercover vehicles. We're relentless when it comes to dealing with this issue. So what we're doing, we're taking it up another notch as of this week. We're looking at all areas of the cities, certainly the top streets where we're seeing fatalities. As you probably know, we've seen more fatalities this year around the city. So each of the precincts are focusing on, and we're looking at our command officers to address those issues. So this is a big deal for us. But what I would ask you to do is if you don't know your neighborhood police officer, or the commander of your precinct, please report areas where this is going on so that we can address it in real time. We don't just wait for the weekend, and while our drifting and our drag racing primarily occurs Friday, Saturday, and sometimes on Sunday, the speeding occurs 7 days a week. But we need to know, so help us and make sure you get that information to us. Thank you. Oh, absolutely. This is something that's very important. So over the last 3 weeks, for example, last weekend was kind of uneventful because of the weather. 20 vehicles taken. And the week before that, we took something like 40, and some of the vehicles that we're impounding, we're actually seizing. And so we're serious about this. In fact, so much so that those vehicles that we're seizing, those who we're targeting, are very concerned. They get on social media, they talk about it. I got to give you a quick short story. We had an incident where one of these high-powered, high-performance vehicles got away from our officers. You can't outrun a helicopter. So we were able to go to the house where this high-performance vehicle ended up. The driver thought they were smart because what she did was park the vehicle we were trying to get and covered it up with 2 other vehicles. So we went and knocked on the door, and we said, look, it's your call. We'll call one tow truck for that vehicle, the one that was involved in the drifting activity, or we'll just take all 3. Of course, she didn't want all 3 taken, so she moved the vehicles, and we ended up seizing that vehicle. So we are serious about this issue, and I just ask that you would make sure we are aware where the activities are occurring. I heard last week 8 Mile is like a drag strip, Telegraph, and so we're focusing on all those areas. So help us out so we can help you. Thank you.
And so we are spending a huge amount of time on the speeding in the city. Innocent lives are being jeopardized, and so it's a very clear strategy. We're gathering intelligence through social media. We've got helicopters in the air. We are not going to chase these individuals in a high-speed chase. It'll put other lives at risk, but we'll get them when they stop. We're sliding undercover vehicles into their groups, being directed from the helicopters, and then we are seizing the vehicles when they stop. And we're going to take a lot of vehicles this summer until this stops. Next question.
Caller, please accept your invitation to the information room, please. Next caller, we have Creed L. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Good evening. Tell us what neighborhood you live in.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening. I have a little bit of hard time hearing you. If you could speak up a little bit.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Go ahead. A little bit. I guess I got good hearing. Go ahead.
All right. Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. First off, District 1, where you say Mary community. 4 quick questions that I think you could do in under 50 seconds.
Maybe my hearing's not as good as I thought it was.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You're cutting in and out, but if you can stay close, let's see if we can get the gist of it.
All right. Okay. The first thing is there's an American flag at Kelly Park. It's on Puritan near St. Timothy Church.
Are you getting this? I'm sorry, you're just not coming through. But if you go into that, they'll invite you into the room and they'll help you with your issue. Right, we can do that, can't we, Kim?
Please accept your invitation to the information room.
And so if you get asked for the information room, the team has set up a new process where if you've got an issue that needs individual attention, we'll put you in the information room and we will give you help. If we were doing this in churches like we used to, you could go over on the side with the department head and work it out. We're trying to create the same thing virtually here with the information room. Go ahead. Who's next?
Next caller is Tracy W. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Tracy, introduce yourself and let us know what neighborhood you live in. Tracy?
Next caller, we have Frank H. Frank H., you may unmute yourself.
We got back around to you, Frank.
Question.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Good evening, Mayor. This is Frank Hammer. I'm a resident of Green Acres, 30 years, and co-chair of the State Fairgrounds Development Coalition. I have two questions for you. One is about the Amazon warehouse under construction at the fairgrounds. You met with us in August. We asked you then to get a written commitment from Amazon that the company would not interfere with workers' rights to join a union, and you declined our request. Since then, the nation has been witnessing warehouse workers in a union drive at Amazon in Alabama. In response, Amazon has engaged in flagrant interference against that drive, so flagrant that President Biden had to call Amazon out about it.
15
Will you
seconds.
now demand that Amazon provide a written pledge that it will comply with the law and respect workers' rights in Detroit to join a union? And that's my first question. And my second question is, when Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement, you and other mayors.
Okay, so let's start with the Amazon question. I completely agree with the statement President Biden made about workers' rights to organize. But City Council and
Well,
I
anyway,
did not,
I was
what do we got here?
going to race around the park. Going, I just went like, I stopped. And I just went like, I don't know, I went.
You guys have the ability to deal with this? Okay, so let me see if I can finish this. So the City Council and I did not inject ourselves into it because we can't lawfully do it. A decision as to workers, whether they organize or don't organize, that decision doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to Amazon. It doesn't belong to somebody calling on the phone. It belongs to the workers at the plant. And they have the right to make that decision. It's a federally protected right. And we did not have a right as outsiders to dictate anything on that process. But I completely support workers' rights. At this point, there's no workers even to form a union. They haven't started hiring yet. But the position that both the council and I took was one required by law, and I completely support President Biden's statement on the issue.
Next caller is Tracy W.
Okay?
You may unmute yourself.
We're going to try again,
Ask your
Tracy.
question.
Okay, was it Tracy before that was talking? Okay. Tracy, we need you back.
Next caller, we have Reverend Roslyn B. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Good afternoon, good evening.
Good evening.
So I'd like to ask good evening. I'm a resident District 1. I'm also the executive director of the Brightmoor Connection Food Pantry, where we see over 3,000 families annually. And here lately, we've seen a large uptick, as you well know, of renters being displaced. And so my concern is the stimulus money. We know that the stimulus money has money, on the budget line set aside for home repairs, but also for rental assistance. I know you spoke about that and you brought in Dan Gilbert. And let me say this, Dan Gilbert, is he willing to also give back all of the monies that he acquired through tax abatements, since he's willing to help? And I need to put in here, since we're, obviously lifting him up, but more, I'm concerned with the fact that homeowners repairs is on the budget line, and we haven't heard about that, but also for renters with the stimulus money. And then finally, in District 1, we're seeing exponential growth and expansion with the weed dispensaries, which is causing extreme displacement and disrupting communities.
Time.
Speak to that and what your intentions is with that.
So let me see if I can take these in order. On the rental assistance, as I laid out at the beginning, we have $50 million in the stimulus money. It's available now. Anybody who has a notice of being late in their rent or has an eviction notice, go to our website. We will get you rental assistance. We will get you a lawyer. If you've been affected financially by COVID, we will help you with your back rent. Anybody who is in danger of being evicted, because they had a financial hit for COVID. The city is going to be there to support you. You may have missed the beginning of that, but that $50 million is there, and the lawyers are there right now. What was the last question? Oh, so what's happening on marijuana, we may disagree with this, but the people of this state and the people of the city of Detroit voted almost 70% to authorize medical marijuana dispensaries. And so we have dramatically restricted them. At one point, we had probably 120 in this city. Now we're down to 45 through aggressive zoning and enforcement. The thing that we have done, and Councilman James Tate has been a great leader on this, is that when we go now, people are applying now for recreational, not medical, but recreational licenses. 50% of all the licenses that will be issued to Detroiters. But I know some people disagree with the fact that there are marijuana dispensaries, but I have a responsibility to represent the views of the majority of Detroiters, and Detroiters and the people of the state overwhelmingly voted to legalize it.
Next caller, we have Carl B. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Hey, Carl, introduce yourself and tell us what neighborhood you live in.
Okay, well, I'm Carl Baxter, and good evening, Mr. Mayor, and I am a resident of District 1 in Quarry, St. Mary.
All right.
Okay, my concern is with the Department of Public Works, and it's in two areas. One, with their dealing with the contractor that picks up our trash, okay? I and some of the other residents in this community have been subject to having to pull our containers extra length away on our property in order to satisfy the request of the contractor. And when I have talked with the Department of Public Works via some council members' office and their liaisons, I was given an ordinance that doesn't reflect the actual ordinance that pertains to the containers. I was given the ordinance of 42-2-27, which resolves with the bulk solid waste location, not the one which is 42-2.
I'm gonna get you an answer. Did you have a second question?
Yeah. The second question is to a concern that I put in last May through the Improved Detroit app with a property that the land bank cuts that someone has now turned into a junkyard, which is behind my property.
Okay, so on the second piece, I want you, when we're done, to go into the information room. I want you to give us that address, and we're going to get out. But please don't unmute this gentleman. I want Ron Brundage, the DPW director, to be able to have a conversation about how this is working. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Baxter. Obviously, I'm aware of your situation. You live on a corner house, and I think your issue is that you want to put your container on the side of the house as opposed to the front, where all of the other containers on your block are situated. And what we've indicated to you is that we can't require our contractors to make a separate trip to go around the block just to pick up one container that's on a side street. You are required to place your container in the front of your house so that when the trucks can come by, they can do it in an efficient manner and service all of the containers on that block at the same time. Now, we do have some situations where the operators of the contractor will choose to just, as an additional convenience, make that effort to make that trip around the block to pick up those isolated locations. But per the terms of our contract, you are required, the contractor is only really required to pick up containers that are placed out in the front of the house. And I'm aware of your specific situation. We've had a conversation with our hauler, Advanced Disposal, that services you. But again, per the terms of our contract, they're only required to pick up containers that are placed in the front of the houses.
Well, Mr. Brundage, the terms of that contract is in direct conflict with the ordinance that we as citizens are required to abide by. Why is the contractor not abide by those ordinances also? Because the ordinance clearly states clearly states as that it does not have to be at the front, but it does have to be on the property line. I am not the only resident that is subject to this, unlike what you just stated. Okay, I have a neighbor that he literally takes his can to the opposite side of the street so that it's picked up, because we live on a street that has addresses on the side street, and if you're a corner house like
So, Mr. Baxter, one other thing I want to say, we also have a service whereby if residents have a challenge in terms of physically being able to get their container to the front of their house, we can actually require our contractor to, in some cases, go into backyards and pull the container from the backyard, service it, and then replace it back, in the resident's backyard. Of course, we only do that in situations where the residents have some type of a physical challenge that makes it difficult for them to get the container to the front of their house. I know you've been cut off. I don't know if you have the ability to come back on, but if you want to give me a call, I'd love to have a more detailed conversation with you. I really want to understand if there's a physical challenge or an issue that I'm not aware of that's maybe making it more difficult for you from being able to put your container in the front of your household.
Well, we could talk about it, Mr. Brudnich, but it's not a physical challenge. It's about what is a matter of the law, okay? And if I am a resident, I'm required to.
Okay, wait, is there a reason you can't put the container in front of the house? Okay, did we lose him? I'm curious now, but okay.
No, I'm still here.
Well, I don't understand. If the trucks, I used to be a garbage man in the back of a truck back when I was in school. But if the trucks go down the street, why can't you put the can in front of the house?
Okay, the reason is, Mr. Mayor, is that because I am on a corner, and it's not just me. Okay, and one.
But what difference does it make to you why it's in the front or in the side? That's what I'm trying to understand.
It's the length that I have to drag the container,
Okay.
which is, and I proved this out.
Do the wheels work on it?
Advance. How the wheels work on it? But yes, Mr. Mayor, would you like to drag a container 100 yards farther than your neighbor?
If you're dragging it 100 yards, you got a really big lot.
Yes, sir. Well, okay. I do. You're more than welcome to come see it, sir.
All right. Well, you got me interested now. If Rod can't solve it, I want to come see this. All right. So, but anyway, you're going to talk to Mr. Brudgers. If there's a reasonable, so far I'm not hearing what the problem is, but if there's really a significant reason you can't put it on the front, and you have to put it on the side, Ron will take a look at that. All right.
Mr. Baxter, please accept the invitation to our information room.
Okay, we're going to follow up, Mr. Baxter.
Next caller is Taretha. Taretha, you may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm from District 1.
What neighborhood are you in?
Whitemore.
Okay.
Okay. I've raised 2 sons there. It's more of a statement. Now, once again, we're being told what is best for our community. We're one of the poorest communities in the state, as we are the least considered. I want to talk about the weed dispensaries. In our community, it may cause childcare facilities to close. New and affordable housing may not come because of the smell. Who wants to smell weed day and night?
15 seconds.
Or have their children smelling it?
So is this a place that's open now or it's proposed?
I'm sorry.
The dispensary you're talking about, is it open today or is it proposed to be open?
Proposed. We're talking about having more dispensaries in our community.
And so what location are they proposing it for?
Brightmore.
For which streets?
And we don't know what effect weed dispensaries or the smell of weed will have on our newborns, our children walking to school, our children standing at bus stops. We know that it will increase traffic. We're a family-oriented community. There's no place for more dispensaries. We're not expendable. Thank you for listening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and so Councilman Tate, who's your councilman, has taken a strong hand in this.
Yes.
There are only about 75 locations in the entire city that can be zoned because you have to be a significant distance away from a church, a park, a school, a liquor store, et cetera. And so there are only enough locations in the city for about 1 every 2 miles on average. And so I need to see what this location was, how it was zoned, and what the conditions are. But I have to say that the well-run facilities are not causing the problems that you're saying. The badly run facilities, our inspectors are out very aggressively. And of course, Pastor Larry Simmons represents your community extremely effectively. And I guess I'd be interested to know where the location is that's proposed. Dave Bell, do you happen to know about this? I don't, Mr. Mayor, but I do. Okay. So I just asked our head of inspection. He's not aware of it, but let us look into it and see what's going on.
Ms. Taretha, please accept your invitation to the information room. Next caller, we have Lay F. Lay F. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Hey, good evening, Mayor. How are you doing?
Good evening.
Hey, so I'm working actually in District 1 near the corners of Grand River and Telegraph, or Grand River and 7 Mile, with Grand 7 Detroit. And so we've been doing a lot of community development work up in there. You probably remember us putting a playground in the neighborhood and some other things like that.
Great work.
So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much. Your office has been fantastic to work with. Both Kaya and Carla have been very easy to get a hold of, and they've helped me on multiple occasions. In fact, recently got me in touch with Luan Counts on a demolition issue that we are working through right now, getting one of our houses demolished via a contractor that is doing it for to give back to the city for giving him a contract. So anyways, it's just been really great working with you guys. One question that I do have, when we put in the park, we had some zoning concerns and things like that, and we appreciated the graciousness of the city to work with us. But as other lots open up, as demolitions happen and things like that, we get creative with what we do with some of the properties.
Time.
Is there anything in place that allows some of these zoning changes to be made faster when it's clearly in the best interest of the city to change those and create opportunities for other developments?
So I'm open to that. The law requires on any zoning change a series of public notices, the opportunity for everybody to speak, and that's baked into the law. But if it is a community-driven initiative, we can move it much faster than it normally would. So I think if you start with Carla, she will work you through the bureaucracy on the planning side, the planning commission side, and the like. What are you thinking you'd like to do?
Well, actually, we just got a grant from Kresge to start planning a community health clinic right there in the neighborhood, directly across the street from the playground. And so that's what's immediately on my mind. But we also have a
So you need to zone from residential to allow a health clinic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically,
I
yes.
mean, if the neighbors are supportive of that, I can't imagine we can't do that quickly. So Carla, will you get on that tomorrow? And let's see if we can't speed that process along. But I love what you're doing. These stories where the neighbors are taking control of the land, and the land bank's doing a much better job of getting the land into the hands of neighborhood groups as opposed to folks from outside the city who are buying in the tax auctions. And I love to hear what you're doing. I hope a number of other people follow your lead.
Thank you.
Lay, please accept your invitation to the information room. Next caller we have is Overwith. Overwith, you may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Yeah, Chairman Willie Bill, this is Ruben Crowley calling you. Lawrence Akbar is trying to reach you to determine whether or not he...
Okay, I think we got somebody's private phone call there.
Next caller is Trish. Trish, you may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Good evening. Introduce yourself and tell us what neighborhood you're from.
This is Trish Doris from District 1 in North Rosedale Park. How you doing, Mr. Mayor?
Good. How are you tonight?
I'm good. Well, I have a complaint, sorry, to say,
That's
but
what we're here for. Go ahead.
we don't know who's running. Well, you guys may know, of course, because you're overseers of the projects that they're doing with the water pipes in front of all the neighbors' houses on Warwick and Sutherland.
I just happen to have the person here who knows the answer. Would you like to talk to him?
Sure.
All right. Well, Gary Brown, come on up and let's talk about what's going on.
Gary, what's going on? Because this project has been running a long time. They dig up in front of the yard. They do a little work. They repave it. Then they dig up all that concrete again, do some more work, and repave that. They're destroying properties over here. Some of our neighbors, and including myself, the grass and all of that property is tore up. Like, what is going on? It takes less time to build a McDonald's than to do this work over here. What is going on?
Yeah, and this isn't unusual. When we do major projects in neighborhoods, I know it's frustrating not to have it done all in 1 year. And unfortunately, last year we got off to a very late start due to COVID. Our contractors couldn't get started on the project, and it was extended into this year. But I can assure you that the project is going to be finished before the end of this season. The neighbors on Warwick, in the middle of the winter, during some of the coldest weather, called me and said, "We want the street redone, now." And so I did. I spent the dollars to cement the street and put in a new street. Ron Brundridge from DPW was instrumental in giving me a hand to do that. And so I admit that there have been a lot of missteps with the North Rosedale project. We had to go into 2 years, but I can assure you I'm taking personal responsibility to make sure that, number one, the contractors do not leave material in the medians. The contractors do not leave debris around the neighborhood. They don't leave equipment. They put it into the staging area as they should. We're going to add 2 additional inspectors to that particular project. And on April 15th, you'll start to see the restorations being made on Warwick. Will be the first street that they start on to get the sidewalks, curbs, and the street put back together. So I apologize for what you've had to go through. I think the mayor heard the same type of complaints over on Oakman until the project got done. And then once the project was done, people had brand new sewer lines or relined sewers. They had new water mains, and most importantly, the lead service lines got replaced. So we haven't forgotten you. We're going to be there in big numbers this spring, and the restorations to the project, which most people are most concerned about, will begin on the 15th of this month.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. So this summer we should be finished. There's no more tearing up concrete, putting more concrete down, leaving, I guess we was on Christmas Day, all the neighbors were stuck in their houses because of all the concrete that was just,
Yeah, your neighborhood insisted the week of Christmas, during some of the coldest weather, for me to resurface that street in big numbers, and so I did. And I assure you that we'll be back to finish that job. It may not be finished by the beginning of summer, but before the construction season is over, I guarantee you that we will be done with that project, and everybody in Rosedale Park will be satisfied with the work that was done. I'm going to take personal responsibility for it.
All right. Who's next?
Please accept your invitation to the information room. Next caller we have is M. McGore. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Please introduce yourself and tell us your neighborhood.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Yes, my name is Matthew McGore, and I'm co-owner of Stash House Culture Shop on West 7 Mile and a member of the Block Foundation, which is the nonprofit component of the Block development. And how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I'm more
Good.
interested in how you're doing.
Good. I just wanted to say, thank you for all of the hard work that your office been doing. I'm a member of District 1. And I just also want to say thank you to Kia Robinson for all the hard work she's been doing, all of the information she's been giving us to help us move along with getting the properties that we're getting and moving along with our nonprofit organization, as well as giving some spotlight to the Stash House Culture Shop, which is our business on West 7 Mile.
So tell people a little bit about your business in case they aren't familiar with it.
All right, yes, the Stash House Culture Shop. We're a studio by our beginning trade was a studio. We've been doing the studio business for about 10 years now. But now at the Stash House Culture Shop, we have our own studio, event space, about 1,000 square feet, as well as we have our own merchandise store in the front. And we also have a vendor that we have partnered with. It's called Superfood, and they actually supply supplements of healthy supplements from turmeric to black seed oil all the way to sea moss. And they actually are helping the community kind of get aware of all the natural ways of the holistic healing part of the medicine, instead of kind of just chasing down all of the Western medicine that's going on around right now.
I love what you're doing. You're getting vacant buildings and you reopen them as businesses. It's terrific. So thank you. Okay, who's next?
Caller is Samantha M. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank you for your time tonight. My name is Samantha Meyer, and I'm a Lower North End resident in District 5. And I just wanted to add my voice to that of those who are opposed to the proposed North End Landing project. The community engagement feels really disingenuous at this point, and my main problem with it is that the single biggest landowner in our neighborhood would become a for-profit out-of-state company overnight, and that there are no opportunities for home ownership and for Detroit residents to build intergenerational wealth. So I just wanted to add my voice to that of those who have been speaking out against.
Yeah, it's going to be a process, and I will be engaged with you before it's over to see if we can't find a fair resolution.
Next caller we have is Annie H. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Annie H., if you're with us.
Yes,
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Annie Holt?
Yes, Annie Holt.
Oh,
How
well,
are you, Mayor Duggan?
You do live in District 1. This is great. Go ahead.
Yes, I do. Okay. We talked about my sidekick, Diane, talked about the speeding on Grand River. Could you help us understand when may we look forward to speed humps that might deter some of that activity?
Well,
and also, Mayor Duggan, one other thing, and then I'll, of course, be quiet. July the 2nd, 2020, I began saving $70 a month on my car insurance. So, and one of your staff people had to bring that to my attention that I was supposed to be getting these savings, because initially my insurance went up. So when I went to the insurance company and I let them know that you said I was supposed to be getting a cheaper premium, of course they went in, I completed some paperwork, and voila. So yeah, what about the speed humps? And thank you for everything you're doing.
So the next time you get mad at me, I want you to remember that $70 a month. And there are a lot of folks in this community, particularly people who are on Medicare, who are entitled to those kinds of savings. And if you haven't gotten it, you ought to look at calling other insurance companies. I'm going to have Ron Brundage. We can't put speed humps on Grand River, but we certainly can put them in the surrounding neighborhoods. I think he's got 4,600. Ron, why don't you talk to folks about the process on the speed humps?
How are you, Ms. Holt? I can't believe I got a question about speed humps at one of these meetings. But as the mayor indicated, of course, we can't install speed humps on a major street like Grand River, but we are going to be installing about 4,500, 4,600 speed humps on residential streets throughout the city, including over 600 in just District 1 alone. If you haven't had an opportunity to see if your particular residential street is on this year's program, you can go to the city's website, detroitmi.gov, and go to the Department of Public Works and just click on the link for District 1, and you can see the complete listing of all of the blocks in your neighborhood that are going to get speed humps this year. If you haven't requested one, if you don't see your particular block on this year's program, you can also go to our website, or you can call us at 224-3901 and request that your block be considered for a speed hump. But again, as the mayor indicated, we're going to be installing about 4,600 speed humps this year, and it's going to cover over 3,200 blocks. So by the time this year is over, we're going to have speed humps on a significant percentage of residential streets throughout the city. So I would just suggest you start first with our website, or if you want to call our office again at 224-3901, you can do that. But first get an understanding of all of the blocks in your neighborhood that are already scheduled and programmed for this year.
Okay, thank you very much for that information.
Have a good evening, Annie.
Miss Annie, can you please accept your invitation to the information room? Next caller we have is Larry S. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
All right, Larry, introduce yourself and tell us where you live. Larry S., are you with us?
Okay, there we go.
All right.
How you doing, Mr. Mayor?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. This is Reverend Simmons that you just called out a few minutes ago.
Larry S. is Reverend Simmons. Do you know where the pot shop is going?
No, I don't.
Okay.
And I wonder if we have another one coming in the neighborhood, but I got Ms. Dixon's name, so I'm hoping
Okay.
to talk to Carla to get her number.
I was surprised somebody else complained about something in Brightmoor before you'd gotten to me first. So that was, you had me confused. Go ahead. You probably have something else you want to talk about.
I got a list, but we don't have time for all of it. I want to raise two things. One, you did a phenomenal job of knocking down houses in the neighborhood. Is there any possibility that rehabilitation can happen, and we can start identifying homes, particularly of seniors, where serious rehabilitation can happen? That's one. Two, has any consideration ever been given to creating racing areas for the kids? Because part of the problem is the young people don't have anywhere to go. And so they wind up hanging out in residential areas. We've got some vacant areas of the city where is it possible that something can be set up where they could do their four-wheeler or their racing
15 seconds.
away from the community?
So let me start with the second one first. I know council is in the process of adopting this year's budget. There will be some minor home repair money. There also will be the opportunity to come back on the federal funds and have a conversation. They'll start to come in May, and we in the council will be having those conversations. And I think there's another opportunity there, and we should plan that together. As far as the racing sites, it's a definition of an area that's abandoned, because there's a lot of areas in this city where the racing vehicles are going to disturb the individuals who live there. Chief Craig, a couple years ago, managed to get City Airport shut down for a day and ran his drag racing down the runway, and then the FAA found out about it and wouldn't let it happen again. I actually thought that was a pretty good idea. And we've been toying around with the idea of down where they're building the Gordie Howe Bridge. If there's an area of this city that really does not have people around, that's it. But the chief is looking, I'm looking, and you'd be surprised how hard it is to find a place that's both safe, but also that the noise won't bother neighbors. If you have suggestions, though, you know the city as well as anybody, we're open to them. The chief would love nothing more than to have the James Craig drag strip. He might even compete.
Lastly, Carla and I are going to be meeting tomorrow, but we have a significant uptick in dumping going on in the area. I don't know if this is going on other places in the city, but I mean, it's gone like significantly.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to maybe take a look at getting some cameras out there. Are there particular places that are repeat sites?
Yes,
Okay, so I don't want you to talk about them on the air.
right.
But we'll have Ron Brundage and your neighborhood police officer follow up with you. Ron probably knows because he's picking up every time they're dumped. But what we've been extremely effective at is putting hidden cameras in the area of repeat dumping and then seizing the dumpers' vehicles. And so it sounds like we may need to reinvigorate that in Brightmoor. All right, so Ron says he'll be in touch with you tomorrow.
Next caller, T. Gersh. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
You're in District 5, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right. I know what you want to talk about. Go ahead.
Actually, it's unrelated.
Oh, really? Okay, good. A new subject.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot of people talk about the racing that's going on. My vehicle was just hit by a intoxicated, uninsured driver while it was parked in front of my house. The same thing happened to my neighbor across the street 48 hours later by a different person. And we've been seeing a lot more illegal activity or sort of like reckless activity. A neighbor's house was broken into while she was in it, a block away from me. And what we're finding is, in the case of both of those cars getting hit, there were no arrests made. I don't necessarily have a solution, but I guess my comment
seconds.
is, I don't think that everything's happening from racing. I think that, well, I don't know what the cause is, but I know that whatever is happening right now isn't solving the problem, and it does seem to just be increasing in prevalence. So I was wondering what your thoughts were.
I agree with everything you just said. So we've got, you're right, it's not all just racing. There are layers on here. The drifting, the racing that have shut down the main streets that are organized, we're putting a huge amount of energy into that. We've got these ATVs zipping down streets in a reckless manner, driven by people who aren't old enough to have driver's licenses. And we need to deal with that. It's not something we want to engage in a high-speed chase on. It's the kind of thing that we need to seize the vehicles. And then we just have people who run red lights, run stoplights, and are reckless in this city. There are two answers to that. Well, one is it would be good if people in the city were respectful of each other. Second, we've gone to the speed humps in a very large way in the areas that have had the most reports. And ultimately, though, and I know I'm going to get protests on this, but we need more police officers because right now what the police department is doing is they are responding to the 911 calls in a far more timely manner than they used to. They're investigating the shootings. What we don't have is nearly enough traffic enforcement officers on patrol. And so I am going to stay with this until we've got the funds. And there's a debate on council now. We got a council member who wants to cut officers that we already have. But we need more traffic officers on the street so people don't run red lights in the city. And you've all seen it. They don't believe they're going to get caught. And Chief Craig and I are talking about how we do that. And I hope in the next year or two the budget comes back. We're talking about adding traffic enforcement officers as well.
Mr. Gersh, please accept your invitation to the information room. Next caller we have is Louis G. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Hey, Louis, introduce yourself and tell us what neighborhood you're in.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Howdy, so I'm Louis Gelinas. I live in the lower north end. I'm active in the block club here. We've been very communicative with our council representative about our goals and desires for development. Bottom line is we want more neighbors, but we would like to preserve the tradition of home ownership, and we do have a lot of concerns about a major development coming in, folks getting quite a bit of assistance from the city to make the development happen, but it is all rental units. No units that would be owned by the occupants, and we just support a mix of development that keeps home ownership active in Detroit.
So again, and I've said this before, there is a lot of merit to your position. I believe we need to have two things. One is I do think we need affordable rental properties along Woodward. I think it is exactly the right place you would have affordable housing because people have access to the bus systems, to jobs in a lot of places. Once you push back off of Woodward, where you've got a solid single-family home neighborhood, I agree with you that we should be trying to preserve the character of the single-family home neighborhood. So I'm guessing before this is over that you're going to be mad at me about the number of rentals, and the developer is going to be mad at me about the number of homeowners, and that probably will be a fair compromise. But I'm hoping the community approaches that in a reasonable way. I think there's merit to this. I also think there's merit to your position. We ought to find a common ground.
Next caller, we have L. Franklin. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Good evening, Mayor Duggan. Thank you for the opportunity. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, fine, thank you. I'm calling on behalf of individuals with disabilities who maneuver the streets on a regular basis. And when I say streets, I mean the sidewalks. What is being done to correct some of these crumbling sidewalks that have tree roots coming up through them? Because the situation that we're creating is a person who is blind, trying to navigate the street, could possibly trip and fall. A person who uses a power wheelchair, their wheelchair is being torn up within 3 years, and the insurance company only replaces it every 5 years. So what is being done to do something about these crumbling sidewalks and broken concrete in the neighborhoods?
So we have a very aggressive plan, and if you have a particular address, we will come out. Here is what the law says. If a tree in the city right-of-way, if a tree between the sidewalk and the street, if those roots break the cement, we will come out promptly and replace it. That's our responsibility. Otherwise, the sidewalks are the responsibility of the homeowner. And so we haven't really wanted to fine homeowners who aren't keeping up their sidewalks. Now, in individual cases where we've had folks, and I've walked down the street with individuals who are in the powerized wheelchair who have to go down the driveway onto the street. We have to walk down the street 4 or 5 houses before they can go back up to the sidewalk. There's individual cases where we know we have people with disabilities where we may go in that particular case and replace the sidewalks. And what I would encourage you to do is talk to your district manager. In fact, let's take your information here, and if you know of a particular situation where we've got a disabled individual, we will come out and see if we can't take care of that.
Ms. Franklin, please accept your invitation to information room. Next caller is C. Garrett. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Mr. or Mrs. Garrett, if you're there. Okay, we got about 10 more minutes. Let's see if we can get through as many of these as we can.
We're not going to take any more complaints from you. That's period. Why not?
Here we go again.
Next caller is Galaxy Note 4. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Okay, please introduce yourself and tell us what neighborhood you live in. Okay, we're losing our callers here.
Next caller is G. Goodwin. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
This is Gloria Goodwine, that lady that like to do stuffies with you when you come to North Roselle Park.
All right. It's good to talk to you.
On this evening. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
I wanted to be invited to the information room because I have a few things I would like to ask on this call and be considered to be considered. So I couldn't get in trying to do the chat. The chat is off. So I just wanted to be invited to the information room. And just want to say overall, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being such a diligent person and pursuing and being a defender for Detroit.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're happy with me, and I'm glad you're not mad at Gary about the water lines. But we're going to have Carla get with you and deal with whatever issues you have. We'll get that in the information room. Thank you for the call.
Please accept your invite to the information room, please. Next caller is W. Green. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Good evening.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to quickly make a quick, I just wanted to quickly say that I'm calling just to express myself and say what a very positive experience I have had dealing with Miss Williamson regarding a tree that I wanted replaced in front of in my front yard. I live in North Rosedale Park, and I had a huge dead tree that was in front of my house, and it was just wreaking havoc on the streets and on my home. And a Detroit tree
15 seconds.
crew came in, and they did an excellent job. They took down a huge tree, did an excellent job, and then I didn't know exactly who to contact, and somehow I got in contact with Miss Williamson, and she was just Johnny on the spot and
Time.
made quick moves, and I just wanted to let you know what a fantastic job she did and what a great help she was.
Well, that's what the district manager is supposed to do, and we're going to keep Carla Williamson around. All right, great job, Carla.
Next caller we have is Kevin. Kevin, you may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Good evening, Mayor. How are you?
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Kevin. I'm a transplant from the suburbs, and I've been
Where are you transplanted to? What neighborhood?
Midtown.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, my concerns were just with startup funds for businesses. They're just disproportionately administered grants and assistance to people for startup. I'm an African American, so the average startup outside revenue is only $500, and I've been trying for 5 years to connect with Motor City Match and different organizations to try to further my ambitions and my.
And what kind of business are you trying to start?
15 seconds.
Well, I do home food production, cottage food production at the moment, and I haven't been able to find other sources to expand my business.
Yeah. So starting a company is hard, and as you know, in any given quarter, we probably got 300 applicants for Motor City Match, and about 75 make it in one level or another. Have you made it through any of them, even through the business plan step in the Motor City?
I have, and also Shark Tank as well.
Okay.
And I also work with different organizations in the community, nonprofits and for-profits, and pretty much the things that we come up with are winners. There's different projects around the city that have been built through public funding and through collaboration with the government. But other than that, I haven't been able to find any resources with city council or.
Yeah, and you're going to have to convince the folks that you've got a winning business plan. So did you get help from Motor City Match on your business plan?
Well, actually, I was told that I would need matching funds and that
Okay, so did,
maybe I should
ask you
start
this,
with the
did you apply to Motor City
crowd
Match?
fund.
Did you actually apply?
Actually, I applied to crowdfund with Soup, but the person I was runner up to, I lost to, unfortunately.
Okay, but we have 75 winners every quarter. You should be able to get, you sound like a very diligent person. I'm gonna have Nicole Sherrod Freeman come up, and I bet she will help you in this process, because there's no reason you can't win with your tenacity, at least the early phases. So, Nicole, why don't you talk to this gentleman what he can do?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for your call. I'm Nicole Schreiber Freeman. I lead the Jobs, Economy, and Detroit at Work team, which includes oversight for Motor City Match and Detroit Means Business. So a couple things. So I'd love to talk to you offline if we could get you in the information room to talk about your Motor City Match experience. We will be continuing the program later this year, and so would love to talk with you about how we could help strengthen what you're doing. And then the second resource I want to turn you on to is DetroitMeansBusiness.org, which will help you build some of the tools that you're going to need to be successful the next time in Motor City Match. So I will connect with you tomorrow if you step into the information room and leave us with your name and number. Thanks. Thanks, Mayor.
Really appreciate it.
I only ask one thing. We get you started and you hit it big. Don't be moving back to the suburbs. We want you to stay in the city. All right, we're past time here. We'll take two more.
My grandfather was the first African American allowed to live in Grosse Pointe, so I'm here to stay.
I'm glad to hear it. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you. Go
Kevin,
ahead.
please accept your invitation to the information room, please.
All right, we're going to take two more.
Next, we have Jay Clipper. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Mute. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi, Mayor Doug, and my name is Jacqueline Clipper. And there's money in the stimulus and the city. Oh, I live in Brightmoor, just so you know. There's money in the stimulus and the city budget for homeowners repairs. So when will that money be released?
So,
and if we have, okay,
you can go to the city website, and I'm not sure when the wait lists are open. I think after council appropriates next year's money, there's a window period where wait lists are open, and then it's for a relatively short period of time. But if you go to the city's website on the housing side, you can find out. And so at some point in the next week or so, council has in recent years appropriated $3, $4, $5 million. It's not a lot of money. We are looking at the possibility of doing something more extensive later this year. And those details we'll be talking about in the next month or two.
So you're saying I would have to go to the city website to find out about the money
housing?
right now, and there's an opening.
I'm going to get you somebody who knows more than I do. So Don Laurentiis runs the program.
That wasn't all that I wanted. I wanted to ask you something else.
Go ahead, ask me the other one, and then I'm going to get you your answer to the first one.
Okay. You was asking on your last TV interview what you were going to do with that stage that you was getting from the state fairgrounds. Well, I was thinking maybe the beautification of Eliza Howell Park would solve that problem for you. You could turn it into an outdoor entertainment venue and get a basketball court, tennis court.
I thought you were going to propose the racetrack, and I was going to say, wow, that was a bold proposal.
Arena. I'm talking about an entertainment venue for bands.
You're thinking about the band shell.
Yes, sir.
And so if the neighbors of Palmer Park don't want it, I've already had requests from Chandler Park and Rouge Park, but Eliza Howell's a very interesting idea. You're right, that's an underused park that is a real gem that people don't know about. I like that idea.
Space just wasted, and if the care was put into it, it could become a wonderful resource for the city. I know Finkel is not a thoroughway to downtown, but Brightmoor do matter, and we do want to have beautification to look at too. And yes, they are dumping all along the streets along here, Keeler, all of them. So
we're going to be out. We're going to be out to deal with the dumping. And let me get Don Lorenzo to answer the questions about home repairs.
Thank you, Mayor. You actually can go to, and hello, I just want to say that. You can actually go to the Housing Revitalization Department website for the city of Detroit. We actually have an ongoing list where you can sign up and we can connect you to partners or into our program, depending on who you are. We have a senior citizen emergency repair program, and we also have a lead program for children. We also have connections where you can get weatherization grants as well. So please go to that website and give us our department a call. Thank you.
Ms. Clipper, please accept your invitation to the information room.
All right, I know we're running overtime, but the last call of the evening. Who's up?
Last caller is A. Aarons. You may unmute yourself. You have 1 minute to ask your question.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
I'm Andrew Aarons. I live in the North End, and yes, I do want to comment on the North End landing briefly. Enough has been said about it, but my main concern is that a community organization, and I won't mention any names, that has a lot of sway in terms of decisions on city property, I think needs to do a much better job of getting community outreach. And I feel like, having a handful of people under a non-disclosure agreement do not really qualify as community input. So that's the main point I want to make.
Well, I don't know about this non-disclosure agreement, but this has been 4 or 5 years of factions fighting with each other over there, and it's just not doing anybody any good. And so we're going to try to do something where we start with the approach that both sides have a legitimate point of view, both sides love the neighborhood and have a stake in it, and I think we can work something out that's fair to everybody. And I would hope we could get people to interact with each other from a standpoint of goodwill and not on personal attacks. And I'm going to work hard to get that done, because we need everybody. The city's not going to come back with us fighting with each other. We've got to come together. We're going to see if we can't do it on your project. Maybe they'll prove overly optimistic, but I'm going to get engaged myself and see if we can't get there. All right. Do we know when the next one of these is?
Open to.
Okay. When are we? So the next one will be District 2. Kim, do you have any idea when? Okay, so it'll be in the next couple of weeks, and we will have an announcement out. We're just going to go over the next 2 months right in order, and we're going to see if we can't find a way to prioritize people in the district. Normally, we do this in a church in a neighborhood, and the great majority of people who show up are from that neighborhood. We need to find a way to make sure that folks from that district can get their neighborhood questions answered first. So we'll see if we can fix that, but thank you all very much for staying with us tonight. Have a good night.